Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
Financial Survival Network is presented to you by Regal Assets. Buy and sell physical gold and silver through your existing retirement plan, 100% tax-free with Regal Assets. If you want to include physical gold or silver in your existing IRA or old 401k, request your free investment kit, which was recently featured in the Forbes and Smart Money Wall Street Journal magazines. Call toll-free 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620, or visit regalassets.com. You are listening to the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1590 WPSL. A lot of talk about the Tea Party. Is it dead? Does it still have a role to play in American politics? Is it playing a role? Well, you can debate that all day long, but let's talk to a leading Tea Party official, Greg Fettig. He's out there. He's one of the faces of the Tea Party. Greg, welcome back to the Financial Survival Network.
Hi, good morning, Kerry. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
The Tea Party, just briefly tell us what it is and what it stands for, what its unifying principles are.
Well, basically, the Tea Party is acronym T-E-A, taxed enough already. Its original foundation was limited government, fiscal responsibility, and free market capitalism. And it's really evolved since then. It's basically people from across the United States, from really all walks of life, that had got fed up with the sorry state of affairs that our country is facing. They decided to get up off the couch and get involved politically. They're not professionals. They're not politicians. And as I said, they've come from all different walks of life, professionals, some not so more blue-collar workers, others white-collar, different religions, race, creeds, everything you could imagine. Is really a cross-section of the United States population that people decided that they should at least voice their frustration and call out our politicians on really that have run amok and that driving this country to financial bankruptcy. And technically we are bankrupt as a nation. Fiscally, and probably morally so too. And along those lines, morally, there are some people in the Tea Party that want to address both fiscal and social issues, and then there's some that strictly want to face or tackle the fiscal, believing that a fiscal responsible government will not fund social issues such as abortion on demand to everybody, just a whole litany of social issues, and in that way it'll take care of itself. So I am more in the latter camp, addressing the fiscal issues, believing that, again, they will take care of a lot of the social issues in the process. But it is a living, breathing, dynamic entity of people that it's changed as we've gotten more educated in the process, more sophisticated in our tactics, and certainly seeing the results of flexing our muscle, in particular in the 2010 congressional races. Those were Tea Party victories. Last fall, we really, obviously, were disappointed, certainly with the presidential outcome, but the Senate as well. And so the way I see it, we're taking incremental steps of victories. You'd love to win the war in one battle, but that's just really not how a war's fought. So we've won some battles, we've lost some, but we're here. We're still a viable political force, and both parties recognize that, and frankly, they're trying to vilify us, but we're not going to go away.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the movement itself, because you've got kind of these social people concerned about social issues, and then you have people concerned about fiscal issues. And my own personal belief is this, Greg, that if we go down the road that we're going and continue going down it, we're going to be bankrupt, the system will collapse, and then the social issues aren't going to matter anyway. So let's stop talking about the social issues. We're in a fight for our survival, and you need to understand that while you might hold certain views about different issues, whether it's gay marriage, whether it's abortion, whatever it might be, once the financial system goes down the tubes, none of that is going to matter.
I agree. I couldn't have said it better, because you have to pick your battles wisely, and we can always address those issues later if we ever get to that point. But if we don't solve the financial crisis, there won't be America as we know it.
Yeah, and that really is what it comes down to, and the concept of being taxed too much, of trying to roll back taxes really encompasses a lot more than just what the tax rate is or anything else. It's really what the scope of government should be, what you should be doing, what you should be providing to people, what services. So I see the Tea Party as really being more libertarian than certainly the Republicans or the Democrats, which no one could accuse the Democratic Party of having any libertarian bent whatsoever.
Yeah, that's correct. By and large, I mean, there's some people. It's really a hybridization of libertarian movement, because a lot of the Tea Party activists do favor a strong foreign affairs policy, where most libertarians, it's almost an isolationist policy that they would embrace. But beyond that, we do both agree that there's just certain limits to the power of the federal government as spelled out in the United States Constitution. And we expect those politicians that have sworn to uphold and defend that Constitution to do what they just pledged they would do, and they're not. They've gone way beyond the scope of their powers. And unfortunately, most states have allowed the federal government to strip them of their state rights, their powers. So we're seeing this just all-encompassing, ever-growing federal bureaucracy that's driven by power and money. And that money, it's an insatiable appetite for it. So they taxes on everything. And when it's not an outright tax, it's a fee, a hidden fee or whatnot. But there's limits to that, and Congress doesn't think they have a spending problem. They think they have a revenue problem. I believe we could cut it in half, and that would still be more money than that they need to do what the Constitution tells them they have to do and tells them what they can't do. So if we got back to that, we would need far less money. We'd be freer as a citizenry. We'd be more prosperous as a society. But the government, as you know, is not efficient with the use of our money. They strip it from us, and then they waste it.
Yeah, and that is a great point, because most of what the government does today is unconstitutional. It's not permitted by the Constitution, but through the courts and through legislative interpretation and overreach and executive overreach, all of these things are somehow justified as being permitted by the Constitution when, in fact, they were prohibited.
Yes, absolutely.
So getting back to a government of limited powers, well, the people who are running things now, regardless their party, they think everything's fine, and they want it to continue on that way.
Oh, that's true. I mean, it's basically, I tell people I don't believe we have a two-party political system in this country, and some people scratch their head when I say that. But, yeah, I mean, you could say we have Republicans, we have Democrats, but we really have one party. It's the ruling class elite with a major player, that in the Democrats, with a leftist philosophy, ideology, and then the Republicans who just really want to have a seat at the power or at the table of power, and they are content by and large with getting scraps thrown at them to them from the Democrats. So it is all about power and money. And once these politicians, some of the best men and women, get to Washington, they don't want to leave. And that really isn't what our founders envisioned. I know they didn't put term limits. Their idea of term limits was at the ballot box, vote them out. But unfortunately, today, people in the United States see, okay, I'm a Democrat, I love them, till death, and they can't do wrong, or I love the Republicans till death. Well, as a lifelong Republican myself, I came to the conclusion several years ago that party was less corrupt, but as corrupt nevertheless as the Democrats, and both parties were leading this over a cliff, literally, that we were going to hit eventually and sooner than later with the financial, the national debt and so forth, the budget deficits. So I took it, and it really coincided with my getting into the Tea Party. So I've gone after both parties politically and marked people for defeat at the ballot box. So I got to the conclusion that this isn't like rooting for a sports team that you love them. You know, you've been a Chicago Cubs fan for 100 years and they never win, but you still love them. And we can't have that mentality with our political parties. They've betrayed us all. Both parties have. So you have to hold them accountable. And if you don't, this gravy train that some people are riding, and even recipients of federal handouts, it's going to end. And when it ends, it's going to end with a big crash, and then none of us will have anything. But right now, you have more than half the population not paying anything into the taxes, and the other less than half is supposed to shoulder that burden. And it's going to break, and I think it's going to collapse within the next few years if we don't do something about it, and it won't be good. And it won't be United States of America as we know it. It certainly won't be anything resembling our Constitution. Not that we're there right now. We're far removed from that, but there won't be freedom as we know it if we don't change this.
The few freedoms that we have left will be gone out the window, and I kind of wish both parties were like the old New York Mets. They were both losers and couldn't do anything, and then you could just root for the better loser, knowing that they were both going to lose. But we're not really in that situation. We're really in a situation where they're both winning, unfortunately, and the loser is really the American public.
Exactly, that's correct. There's no other way to put that. It's all about the power, and the Republicans want it too. They're just content in playing second fiddle more often than not.
Yeah, they seem to be very good. They're like Avis Rent-A-Car. They try harder because they're number two. Right?
That's correct. That's absolutely right.
So what's ahead for the Tea Party? How can the Tea Party mobilize, stop the bickering, and really focus in on the important issues, which are the existential issues that threaten the country, and put your future, your children's future, and your children's children's and future in jeopardy?
Well, my advice to anyone in the Tea Party or anyone wanting to make a difference, even if they don't want to call themselves Tea Party per se, is look at all politicians objectively. There's a funny thing about the dynamics of people. They hate Congress. I think Congress has about an 8% approval rating, and that's ironic because Muammar Gaddafi had a higher rating than that, and you know what happened to him. So we have 8% approval rating of our Congress, but everyone loves their congressman or woman. But those, they're okay, but all the rest of them are bums. Well, you have to get beyond that and look at them all objectively. And I tell Tea Party activists on a regular basis, you cannot look at these politicians, and some people in the American public look at Hollywood and they're starstruck at celebrities. Well, in the Tea Party movement and people really involved in politics, they have that same affliction, but towards their politicians. And I keep myself neutral on that. I call those people political groupies, because once you do that, I don't care if the guy has done, say, Ted Cruz, for example. I like him. I've met him. He's a nice guy. I helped campaign for him for a weekend down in Texas. I couldn't vote for him because I'm not from Texas. But I'm going to hold him, at arm's length, because inevitably he will disappoint people. Now, that's going to happen in anything you do in life, but if it's minimal, then that's acceptable, because you can't please everyone all the time, and you can't agree with someone 100% all the time on everything. That being said, if he was my senator, or we have a governor here in Indiana, new governor as of January, former Congressman Mike Pence, and there's some people in the Tea Party that practically, or believe he practically walks on water and thinks he can't do any wrong. Well, now that they found out in the 3 months he's been in office, he's really not that much of a leader, at least not for the first 3 months of his term. He's letting the Senate and the House in Indiana really push the dialogue on what's going on, and he's almost in the back seat going along for the ride, and they're disappointed in him, and slowly but surely I think they're starting to see that. But before they thought, they practically worshipped him, and you can't do that and then turn around and think you're going to be able to fight him when he's not doing something right. So you have to be objective. That's the first thing I would recommend to people. Just look at them all objectively and don't get into it emotional. Look at it more just as a matter of fact. Secondly, keep on doing it. This is not, don't get deterred by lack of results, because we had them in 2010, but we didn't have them last November. That's going to happen. If we can keep fighting this, we can keep the country intact and afloat and buy us time. And if we can do that, this may be a generation or a multi-generational battle, and I know people don't want to see that. In our society, we're instant gratification. But it took 100 and some years to get to this point, and it may take 20, 25, 30 years to turn it around. I don't know if we have that much time, but if I thought we didn't, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I would be doing something else and just waiting for it all to collapse and trying to prepare as best I can. I've chosen to take my efforts and fight exactly in the way I'm doing it, and hoping that it's enough, and then that my children and my hopefully grandchildren that down the road would be able to enjoy what America's all about. Otherwise, they're going to be in a vastly different country, and to think that it can't happen in the United States is foolish. Look at Venezuela. 15 years ago, it was a free nation. It's communist. We know Cuba's communist. This country's headed to the road, on the road to communism.
Oh, it's
and if you
clear.
don't believe it, you're not paying attention.
It's very clear that totalitarianism is going to rear its ugly head in the United States, and you better do something now, or you're going to suffer the consequences. And hopefully the Tea Party's got some of the answers. But a Mike Pence, who really had an outstanding record in the House, in Congress, now he's actually in a position where he gets to set policy, to implement policy, and to run things, and he's failing. What do you do with a Mike Pence? You helped get him in there. He's got 4 years now, and what's the alternative? Because you could elect somebody far worse than him the next go-round.
No, that's correct, and I think the answer to that is to hold his feet to the fire. I'm not Mike Pence. I'm not in his head. My instincts say that this is a 4-year executive experience stepping stone for him to go back to Washington and run as presidential candidate in 2016. I'm certain. I'm not a betting man, but I'd put a few dollars down on that wager. I think he has an aspiration, and he's not going to coast just to get that experience. I certainly will hold his feet to the fire. There are certain things he has to do. Our state's primed for state rights movement. We have a supermajority of Republicans in both the House and the Senate, and they are challenging Governor Pence. They're not outright saying that, but you can tell they're just testing him. They won't give him his 10% income tax cut he's asked for. They are spending a lot of the money. We have a $2 billion reserve in this state, which is just pretty much unheard of in the nation with the economic situation.
Yeah, besides Texas, yeah.
Yeah, and Governor Daniels had proposed in his administration that you get back, after a certain dollar amount, you get back 25% of it, because it's just excess money that they'll have a tendency to want to spend. Well, this new House and Senate, they want to spend a lot of that. And so I've challenged them, and I've called out to them and telling them, warning them that they are following the same path that in 1994 U.S. Congress followed. We got the House back after 40 years there, and then those Republicans started acting a lot like Democrats, big spenders, big taxers, and they are directly responsible for the election of Barack Obama. Had they maintained their conservative values, Barack Obama would never have been president. Yeah,
bunch of whores. And speaking of whores, your state, actually it's not your state, I take it back, but Majority Leader Boehner, pretty much exactly what you expected from this guy, right?
Oh, yeah, and I've got a lot of friends in Ohio, Tea Party activists, and I'm just frustrated that they won't primary him. They thought there is, well, why? He votes generally, before he was speaker, he was not a bad guy as far as voting, and we could get far worse. And that mentality it frustrates me because, no, I don't see how he is now in the leadership position, and he is a poor leader. He negotiates against himself. Every time the Democrats draw a line in the sand, Boehner will back up right to it and say, okay, and then he'll draw a line closer to him. He keeps drawing it back and back and back, and then finally he says, we have a deal with the Democrats. It's just weak leadership.
Yeah. What about this concept of shutting down the government? Is that something to be feared, or is that something to be embraced?
I've embraced exactly what I was going to say. Embrace it boldly. Quit worrying about repercussions that, we're going to get the blame for it. Well, we being the Republicans will get blamed for it if you allow the Democrats to run the narrative, just like on immigration reform. You think that you're going to get all these illegals to vote for you, or at least you're going to get a big piece of the pie by capitulating and giving in to what the Democrats want. If you sell what this country is about, you work hard and you prosper from your own toils, and you promote that, Hispanics, by and large, do value those things. They're family-oriented. They're exactly opposite of Democrat values. So quit being afraid of the Democrats. Don't let them run with the ball. When you play defense all the time, you're never going to win a ball game. You have to play offense. And the Republicans don't know how or won't. They're cowards.
Yeah, and what about this concept of ideas and debate? The fact is that statist ideas, the concept that, ask not what you can do for your country, ask what your country can do for you, a little opposite of the Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. But the point is, statism, socialism, communism has failed every time it's been tried, going back to the Mayflower, going back in history. Every totalitarian, statist, collectivist grouping has failed. Why can't they debate that and win?
Oh, they won't. And the Democrats, President Obama has tried to convince the American people that we are not an exceptional nation, that we're just another nation among nearly 200 nations around the world. And first of all, that's not true. We are exceptional, but we are not. And then they contradict themselves. They think we are exceptional to the fact that we could defy the failures of socialism, and we're not. In that regard, we are not exceptional. It does not work. It won't work. It can't work. It's just inherently flawed. But somehow we are going to be different, and we're going to make socialism, communism work. It won't. And there will be people, the path we're going down, if we don't change it, there will be people, just like in all the other countries, that will be murdered or killed, eliminated, because that's what communists and tyrants do to shore up power. Now, what I am always almost smile, I certainly hope that it doesn't come to this, but the very people supporting Obama and the Democrats and their leftist agenda, journalists, the media by and large, they are the first ones eliminated in a communist totalitarian system.
Of course, the Trotskyites get the axe right away.
Yes, exactly. And obviously, these journalist majors didn't take any history courses, because if they had, they would know that this happens the world over.
Yeah, there's nothing new. Just go to Cuba. A great example of it. All those people who were pro-Fidel wound up in prison for 25, 30 years or executed by that murderous Che Guevara. And that's the other thing, that the left embraces that guy who was a sociopath of the worst and a drunk. I mean, Che Guevara was pure evil, and he was stupid to boot. That's what
right.
people
and he
don't...
He met his fate in Bolivia, where it didn't quite sell so good at the time.
Yeah, and one of the things that very few people are aware of is, they went down there to help foment revolution in Bolivia. They fled to the jungle, and a real military leader in that instance wouldn't have allowed his troops to be split up and they wound up splitting into two groups. And for months, they walked around in circles shooting at each other, and they didn't even know that they were shooting at each other. I mean, that was the funniest thing. I mean, the guy was basically a total dolt, and this guy's on T-shirts and everything else. It just makes no sense to me, but that's the type of revisionism and the type of history. So, Greg, we got to wrap up, but what have you got planned for the next, between now and the next election cycle in 14?
Well, my personal agenda and mission is really to shore up the Midwest. The Tea Party supports the built coalitions. Indiana's doing real well based on our Senate race last year. It's fairly intact, and that the Tea Parties are working together. And we're starting to see that in Kentucky and Michigan. I'm going to Missouri here in the next few days to help them with their networks. So the biggest thing is when they link together, although they're independent Tea Party groups, but when they get to know one another, work together, and work for a common goal, they can have just really flex their muscle and have positive results. So that's what we're doing here on the down year, the off-election year. So next year, hopefully, we'll be able to pick up a couple Senate seats, hopefully, build up the House again. And midterms usually are not favor the party that's in power in the House, but we aim to keep the House, keep Obama at bay on that. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. It's not a lot of flash or pizzazz. The people that aren't in the Tea Party or the media certainly is not going to follow it, and they think that because it appears quiet that we're dead. But that's a mistake. That's at their own detriment to believe that.
So reports of the Tea Party's death are greatly exaggerated.
Exactly right.
All right, Greg. Well, hey, thanks so much for being on the Financial Survival Network. Good luck with bringing off this coalition. Maybe for 2016 we'll actually see a Tea Party party, but that remains to be seen. If people want to find out more about you, contact you, where should they go?
You can contact me at gregfettig@reagan.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Patriots.
Hoosier Patriots, great. All right, thanks, Greg. We'll talk with you again soon.
Take care, Kerry. Bye-bye.
I keep hearing that many people believe that the best investments are sold by large investment houses. But how many people do you know who got rich in the stock market? I thought so. Jason Hartman has helped thousands of people create real wealth with real estate. He has over 20 years experience, and his company provides the complete solution for real estate investors. Isn't it time you acquired property in diverse, growing markets nationwide for as little as $15,000 down? Don't let inflation destroy the value of your savings, stocks, or bonds. Real estate is the one investment that allows you to profit from inflation. For cash flow and capital appreciation, there's nothing else like it. Make your money work as hard as you do by building an income property empire. Go to www.jasonhartman.com and tell him Kerry sent you.